Today's guest is Bill Wilson, a leadership and communication coach with decades of experience spanning medical device sales, global business, and executive leadership. Certified through John Maxwell Leadership Program, Bill helps leaders break through roadblocks with clarity, character, and human center. He also creator of the Wild Wisdom, where powerful, very powerful lessons from the African bush meets the modern leadership. Enjoy. Let's dive in. Bill, thank you so much once again for taking your time and chatting with me today. It's an absolute honor and a pleasure. So excited to just have this great conversation with you. And I guess for the viewers, if we can just give me a little bit quick background about who's Bill.
Yeah, thanks, Sanjar. Nice to meet you. Hello, everybody. So yeah, my name is Bill. I'm the founder of Raise the Lid. I'm a Maxwell Leadership Certified keynote speaker, trainer, coach. I have a long background in medical device sales and marketing, both in Southern Africa as well as here in the US. So looking forward to bringing my expertise and just chatting to Sanjar.
Absolutely. And just to be clear, so for the viewers, I hear you mentioned the comment South Africa. Is that where you're from originally, or more of a UK accent?
I'm originally from the UK. Good spot.
Yeah.
Born and grew up in the northwest of England. I'm a Scouser, born in Liverpool, Beatles territory. I moved to South Africa as a young man, met my wife and stayed there for a while, and then got moved over to the US and been here for over 30 years now.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Well, let's dive into some of the questions that I had for you, since you have such an extensive background in leadership. What fundamentals, mindset shifts do you believe today's aspiring entrepreneurs need to make to thrive in a landscape of 2026? And what separates the thrivers and the survivors in this rapid changing market?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there is so much changing going on right now. And there's, you just got to turn the TV on, look at the news, and see a lot of different opinions out there. There's a lot of division. And I really believe in two fundamental things. Is that first of all, you have to treat everybody with respect. Leaders should be servant leaders. They should be looking at what they can do to help others, not what they can do to direct others. I think that's an age-old concept that's been around forever, but also, things are changing fast. Technology is coming through, AI is coming to the fore. We've got to be able to embrace change. In fact, I heard a quote just today, which I liked, that said, it's been said that the only people that like change is a baby with a dirty diaper.
Nah. And I have 4 of them at home right now. Ain't that the truth?
But yeah, we need to embrace it.
Yeah, you talk about actually AI, right? And, change is not easy. I know that people are sometimes resist change. You mentioned using AI efficiency in your practice in the professional training and coach space, where human nuance is the key, obviously.
Right.
How do you see moving beyond simple content creation to become a genuine asset that enhances a coach's ability to deliver personalized, high impact results for their clients?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's a lot of talk being designated right now around AI.
Mhm.
People saying it's going to replace a lot of things, but, AI can never replace the human. So it's a tool, and it's how we use that tool. We need to learn those tools. We need to know how to use them. But, when it comes to leadership, I really believe that AI didn't replace leadership, but it raised the bar. So, it used to be that there were excuses if something failed and it wasn't working out the way you wanted as a leader. Some excuses like, well, I didn't have enough information. I didn't see that coming, or I didn't have time to think. Those have gone because AI can just replace all of those, right? And, what remains are the human elements, right? AI can't exercise judgment, which is the best way to do something. It can't take into account the culture of a company. AI can't display courage or communicate properly. There's different types of communication that's needed in different scenarios. There's certain nuances that need to be brought in, and, character. So, AI can accelerate insight, but, leadership still requires wisdom. And that's why I actually created a format called the Rhino Roadblocks. And it's based from an experience I had in South Africa. I love the African bush and the wildlife, and I'm actually working on a a whole series called Wild Wisdom, Leadership and Lessons from the African Bush. And the first one that I'm rolling out is called Rhino Roadblocks. And
Okay.
it's a framework with a 5-step process, RHINO, to overcome roadblocks. AI can help in some of those steps, but you still need to make those judgments and have the courage and strength to move forward as a leader to overcome those roadblocks.
Can you talk more about the Rhino Roadblock?
Yeah. It's interesting we're having this, conversation, towards the end of January. How many people have had New Year's resolutions that have already gone by the wayside? And it's not because they weren't real goals that they had. It's not because they were motivated to achieve them. I believe that one of the main reasons that people fail and give up is because they hit a roadblock and they've never been taught how to overcome it. So, the backstory is it's one of the modules in Wild Wisdom. And we were out on an early morning game drive in the African bush, and the ranger got a radio call. There'd been a leopard kill. That's kind of rare. So, oh, great, we've got to go see this. So we're trying to get to the other side of the park in this Land Rover. We turn a corner on this dirt road, and there, standing in the middle of the road, is 2 big rhinos. So screech to a halt. So now what do you do? And, you talk to people what do you do when you come across a roadblock? People will say, well, you just push through. Keep going. Just push through that roadblock. Well, that's not going to work too well with a big rhino there. You're going to come off second best, right? Especially when we realized there was a baby standing between them. So any sort of aggressive movement towards it would have just been the end of us. But, the Rhino, as I mentioned, it's a 5-step process, RHINO. R stands for, recognize the real barrier. So you're going to recognize what that barrier is, right? And then the second one, the H, that's honor constraints and risks. Sometimes a roadblock's there for a good reason. You're supposed to stop and think. You're not supposed to just push through, right? So you've got to honor the constraints and the risk and assess what you need to do. The I stands for involve the right people. So, when you come up against a roadblock, now what do you do to move forward? Depending on the scenario, if you're in a corporate environment, for example, and you're trying to launch a new product and you get stuck, well, what do you do? Who do you need to involve? Right? Who needs to be notified and just to be aware of it? Who needs to be involved in actually fixing it and, continuing to move forward and, or making the ultimate decisions? I have a whole matrix that can, go into depth about that. The N stands for navigate options wisely. So you need to figure out, like, what are the options? What can I do here? We could have pushed through and tried to, honk the horn and yell and get those rhinos to move. We could have turned around and gone the other way and try and find a different path to get to the other side of the park. We could just sit and wait it out. There's different options. So you want to navigate the options wisely and determine the right course of action. You've got to own the advance. That's the O. So you've just got to take forward and just, believe you made the right decision and go for it.
Which one do you think majority entrepreneur leaders struggle with?
I think the H and the I probably are kind of the
Why?
key to this, because that's a great question. And I think it does vary depending on the scenario. And I've come across this in many different, scenarios throughout my career. But usually when there's a barrier, people recognize the barrier. They know it's there, right? Sometimes there's a hidden aspect to it. Like in this one, at first glance, it looked like there were just 2 big rhinos standing in the road. At the beginning, we didn't see the baby kind of stuck between them at the beginning. So, you got to look at it a little bit closer to kind of but you still recognized it. I think honoring the constraints and risks, sometimes people will just have a tendency just to push through. There's something in the way. Let's just barge through this and just
Work hard, right?
we've got
Just
to,
work
yeah,
hard. Just keeps making other sales goal.
yeah, we got a deadline. We got something we need to hit. Just go for it, right?
Just go
And
for it. Or just
that can backfire
yeah,
tremendously. I work for a
from
company
the
that
morale
launched a product. There was delays in the product launch because of quality issues. They pushed ahead, did it anyway, and it backfired. We ended up with a product recall, cost us millions and a lot of poor PR in the workplace, and in the industry. So I think the H is one, and then I involve the right people. And I think especially with entrepreneurs, there tends to be a fact, well, I'm the guy, I'm the gal that's doing this. This is my business. I've built this. I've got to do everything, right? And I see this fairly commonly with small business owners. They started off with whatever it was, doing it out of their garage or, whatever, and they're building a business. And as they're growing, they need to bring more people in. You shouldn't be doing your books. Get a bookkeeper. You don't need to be doing your marketing. Get someone to do your social media for you. You can't do everything. You've got to involve the right people depending on what that roadblock is that you're trying to, push to the next level. And then I think, the navigate options wisely, that comes if you've gone through the first 3 steps properly and you've really done a good job, then it should become obvious which is the best option for you in your situation, depending on what your outcomes that you're looking for, and then only advance. I think that one can trip people up because, like, oh my gosh, what if it doesn't work? Are we going to go back to square one? But I think, again, if you follow the process properly, once you get to that final step, you should have confidence that this is the right thing to do. And
Right.
it may lead to another roadblock. It may not be the clear road you were expecting. There might be another roadblock around the corner. Well, guess what? You just go through the process again.
As more businesses process become automated by AI, how can entrepreneurs ensure they don't lose the human element of the communication and connection that is very essential for true leadership and building strong teams culture?
Yeah, that's another great point. Everybody has a unique personality and a unique communication style.
Yeah.
And I am a certified, disc trainer with the Maxwell disc method. And, I've really noticed this in the workplace as well, that especially in my background with medical device, is that when you come together as a cross-functional team, and I've led a number of Kaizen events with, continuous improvement initiatives, you
Mhm.
come together as a cross-functional team and you're trying to solve a problem or make a process better or eliminate waste in some area or whatever it might be. You've got a number of different layers. I call it peeling the onion. You've got different functions within the organization. Like finance has different goals. They just want to save money. It's sales and marketing. They want to get products out there and grow the business. Regulatory, I've got to make sure that you're, sticking within the rules of engagement and following the regulatory guidelines. And R&D is looking for the next great thing that they can go and, do things. Everyone's got different agendas. When you add on top of that, then the individual personality styles, it can really challenge how those meetings can turn out. And you really do need to understand each other's style. I always use the example of just the other weekend. I've got 6 grandkids, and we went to
Wow.
our 5-year-old's gymnastics event. It was a lot of fun. Right. It was just, and I could imagine going to work on a Monday morning and just can't wait to share my experience. And, I see someone and say, hey, how was your weekend? And they look at me and go, it was great. Now, where's that report you owe me? And you're thinking, man, I just want to tell you about my granddaughter's gymnastics event. He's like, this guy doesn't care about me.
Doesn't care about me. Right, right, right.
No, that it's just that they're a D type of personality that just wants to get things done. It's not that they don't like you or anything. It's just their style. Then you can bump into somebody else and say, hey, how was your weekend? And 15 minutes later, you're thinking, I wish they'd shut up. I need to get to work. And they still haven't asked me about my weekend.
They talk about themselves, right?
Yeah. So, and I think if you understand those styles, then, you can really, really communicate effectively. And in fact, that's one of the workshops that I do is about effective communication. And first of all, you got to look at, what personality style you are, what communication style you have. And then I got some tools that show you if you're a D, how do you communicate with other Ds? How do you communicate with an I or with an S or with a C? What are some do's and don'ts for that type of communication? And then so on. If you're an S, how do you communicate with the D or with another S, and so on. And it really is an eye opener for a lot of people. And they go, it's so much fun when you see the light bulb go off and they go, that's why they're like that. Now I get it.
Well, if Entrepreneur in 2026 has successfully leveraged AI to manage 90% of the content, marketing, operational task, what should they be spending the newly freed up time on?
That's a great question. And I think that depends on what their goals are. And I think that's where, one-on-one coaching, mentorship comes in. That's another one of my wild wisdom modules, by the way. I've got this great shot of a mother rhino with a little baby. They've got to be taught the ways of the bush so they can survive. The same way in the corporate world, you need to have somebody mentoring you, and you should be mentoring somebody else. Right. So it's always important then to understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Right. So It's hard to answer that question without knowing more about, what the entrepreneur's goals are. If the goals are to build a business so I can have more time with the family, then start having more time with the family from that time you freed up. If your goals are, to grow a business to a point where you can have an exit strategy, then look at ways you can leverage that time to grow your business faster. It really just
Yeah.
depends what your individual goals are.
Different for everybody, right? If you have an advice for entrepreneurs, what would that be? Whether it's from building a business or being a better leader, being a better impact player, starting a business, do you have an
Yeah.
advice?
I think two things, and it's the way I've lived my life. And first of all, it's the age-old mantra, going back to servant leadership. It's treat others the way you want to be treated, right? So treat others with respect. It doesn't matter who they are. There's so many stories. I got the great story of the medical sales rep that was multiple times trying to get an appointment with a doctor and couldn't get in. And finally, he has an appointment and he walks in there and the regular receptionist isn't there. It's somebody else filling in. And the doctor's running late. He's 45 minutes over his appointment time. And he starts getting really abrupt and almost rude with the receptionist. And finally, the doctor comes out and he goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry I'm late. I had a few extra patients. By the way, have you met my wife? She's filling in for my receptionist. She's off for the day," right? So, you've got to treat everybody with respect because you just never know, right? And you should do it because that's who you are. And then the second thing kind of comes back to the driving force behind the Rhino Roadblocks. I really believe there's no such thing as failure. You either win or you learn. And again, I'm a student of John Maxwell. One of my favorites books is called Failing Forward. I think he rewrote it recently, called Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You, and then lose was crossed out and put learn. So, you can learn from your failures. And that was one of the motivating factors behind Rhino Roadblocks as well. It's not a failure. It's just something that you can overcome and learn from. And sometimes the right thing to do is turn around and go the other way and ignore that and go down a different path. Sometimes that's the right option, and that's okay.